Hi, Dave Pemberton here at Manchester Recording Studios. I'm going to show you how I made my new single, I, which is out now on Newman Records. So, get straight into it. The first thing I did was, I had a reference track for this, which you see on my screen here is Quatamaja, the Pete Herbert remix by Yusek Juter and Oquez. You check it out on Spotify, there it is. First thing I did was I put that into my DAW, into Pro Tools. I'll give you a quick blast of it. As you see, it's quite a bit of a housey sort of vibe. So my aim is with the reference track is not to copy it, it's just to use it as a vibe and general tempo. Just elements in the track. There's like a one-note bass line is the big thing that strikes me straight away in this track. There's a few vocal samples, a couple of little synthy bits. So that's what I'm looking at when I'm listening to that. So the first thing I did with this track was I started to program up some drums. So I went to Splice, looked for a house loop as a template. I never intended to keep this in the track. It was supposed to be just a template that I was going to program and replace it, but I've ended up, I kept it in there. Then I got a kick drum, which is just an audio sample. One of my libraries just pulled a kick out, an 909 kick, programmed that up to match the loop, made it nice and tight. Then I programmed a clap using battery. Battery's kind of my go-to drum machine for this kind of thing. Standard 909 kit, really. Duplicated a few different channels of battery, and I programmed up an open hat and a closed hat, and then a few little extras. A little closed one there. Some little sound effects for the same drum patch, a crash cymbal. So there we have the basics of the drums, the kick, snare, clap, hats. And so I started to think I need some chords. So the next thing I did was I got up a Fender Rhodes keyboard, Orturia Stage 73. Got a basic Fender Rhodes sound and started jamming around, trying to find some chords. Came up with this little chord progression here, which I played a long section, just found a bit that was good, chopped it out, quantized it, edited it a little bit, turned off a few notes. So then I copied that to a piano, which just gives a bit more depth to the sound. I'm using again an Orturia piano there, the Studio Jazz Grand. So you've still got the wobble of the Rhodes in the background, but you've got the attack and the brightness from the piano. Then I made a pad. Again, I just copied the chords down, but I deleted all the passing notes and all the little fiddly notes and just made each note one bar long, just short of one bar. And the same chord pattern, basically. I moved a few notes up and down, turned a few notes on and off. I used the Spectrasonics Omnisphere for this, warm glue. I love this synth for pads and strings and all that kind of stuff, or for loads of stuff. It's got great basses in there. It's got everything you could ever need in there, really. Then I used the Sonox Dynamics to give the sidechain compression. You see, I've got the key input switched on, and I've got the key input feeding from bus 13, and then I'm sending my kick drum up there to bus 13 on the aux channel there, which is giving me a quite fast attack and release, 7.5 ratio, 8:1 ratio. He's giving me that pumping sound. I'll switch it off. The pad's kind of a bit indistinguishable. You switch that on, it's got some groove to it. It's moving with the track. So I carried on, I duplicated that again and made a string track. For the strings, I'm using the Spitfire Audio BBC Symphonic Orchestra. It's actually a free plugin. Amazing strings. So I made two little string lines there, a lower one and a higher one. Again, just by copying the chords down, muted them all and just turned on some single notes. So I've got the higher one at the top there, and underneath you've got the lower one. They're actually two parts. At this point, I decided to commit all my MIDI. The track's taking shape. I've got a decent kind of a rough arrangement going on, but I've got a lot of MIDI going on here. I always worry with MIDI that when I save it and come back to it, that you might lose the sounds. In fact, this happened on there. I loaded it up and the battery sounds had disappeared. So luckily they were just 909s pretty much. So I just went to my go-to Holy kit, and I knew what they were, so it was pretty quick. So I decided to commit all the MIDI. So to commit the MIDI in Pro Tools really quick, you just select the MIDI tracks, click commit, choose your format. Usually I do hide and make it inactive afterwards. Click OK, and it runs down and records all your MIDI tracks and makes them audio.